A father is sitting alone in silence. His son is dead, and he is sharpening himself into a weapon. The blood-soaked fireworks of Christmas night are about to begin. But first he needs to know his targets. Brian walks into the police station as a victim. He asks Inspector Dennis about the progress of his son's case. While waiting alone in the office, Brian notices something on the wall. The entire wall is covered with photographs of gang members. He recognizes some of the faces immediately. These are the people responsible for his son's death. Brian quietly pulls out his phone and photographs everything on the wall. Then a sketch catches his eye and makes him stop completely. A bald man staring back at him from the wall. His name is Playa. He is the one who shot Brian in the neck and left him for dead. Inspector Dennis walks in and finds Brian already heading for the door. The detective looks into Brian's eyes for just a moment. He sees something growing there, a seed of hatred that has already taken root. Brian goes home and pins every photograph onto his own wall. He marks out a plan to eliminate all of them on a single night. Christmas Day, the first anniversary of his son's death. From this moment, the revenge begins. Brian starts training every single day without stopping. He pushes his body past every limit he thought he had. He studies combat techniques and learns professional methods of incapacitation. In the beginning, he can barely get through basic physical training. Weeks later, he is handling heavy combat drills without slowing down. Brian buys a battered old car from a dealership with cash. The wipers sweep the dust from the windshield as he drives away, like his targets coming slowly into focus. He takes the car home and begins modifying it immediately. The sound of hammering fills the house every single day. His wife knows exactly what he is doing. She understands, but she cannot stop him. Having a powerful body is not enough. Brian knows that without accurate shooting skills, none of this will work. His first time at the range is a disaster. Every shot misses wide. He walks away and studies firearms with the same obsession he brings to everything else. That night, the weight of everything finally breaks them both open. Brian and his wife hold each other through the darkness without saying a single word. He understands her, and they both understand the unspoken truth. She is going to leave. Not because love is gone between them, but because being apart for a while may be the only way either of them survives this. She wipes her tears and picks up her bags. She steps through the door and does not look back. Her leaving frees Brian from his last remaining worry. Now we see how this all began. It was Christmas Day, a happy family of 3 celebrating together in their backyard. Then, without warning, the night exploded. Gunshots rang out and brakes screamed on wet asphalt. 2 rival gangs were shooting at each other in the street nearby. Stray bullets flew in every direction without care for anything in their path. Brian and his wife threw themselves over their son instinctively. When the shooting stopped and the cars disappeared, they looked down. Fresh blood was soaking through their son's clothes. He was gone. Brian chased after them, immediately consumed by pure fury. He followed the sound of the gunfire and ran toward both gangs still shooting. He spotted a green car and chased it into a narrow alley. He found a crowbar in a pile of garbage and swung it hard at the vehicle. The car lost control for a moment but recovered. Then the green car turned around and came back for him. Brian was caught in the alley with nowhere to go. He tumbled trying to get clear. A man stepped out of the car with a gun. He fired directly into Brian's side. The man's name was Playa. The gang leader, Playa, looked down at Brian bleeding on the ground. He raised the gun calmly. He fired one more time into Brian's neck. Then he walked back to the car and drove away. The scene shifts to a hospital room. Inspector Dennis stops by out of curiosity. He wants to know if Brian is still alive. He leaves his business card on the table and walks out without a word. Something strange begins to happen outside Brian's hospital window. A parrot appears on the ledge every single day. It stays there watching over him for hours at a time, almost as if his son's spirit has returned in some form, praying for Brian to wake up and come back. The prayers are eventually answered. Brian's wife visits every day without fail. The parrot comes to the window every day without fail. Slowly, Brian begins to recover and starts the long process of rehabilitation. But the damage to his vocal cords is permanent. He will never speak again for the rest of his life. The feeling is like screaming inside a silent room. His mouth opens, and nothing comes out. When Brian finally comes home, the memories flood in immediately. His wife wraps her arms around him from behind and holds him there. The soccer ball in the yard has gone completely flat. Everything inside the house is exactly as it was on that Christmas day. The gifts his son never got to open are still sitting under the tree. The pain is unbearable. Brian reaches the refrigerator and pulls out a bottle of liquor. He tilts his head back and drinks. His wife stands in the doorway and watches him in silence. Then her own grief erupts all at once. There is no mother in the world who can lose a child and remain strong forever. Brian locks himself in the basement. He disappears into alcohol and grief for weeks. Then one day in a drunken haze, he thinks of his son, and something changes inside him. He cannot let himself stay like this forever. The seed of revenge begins to push through the darkness. It is October, just over 2 months left until Christmas. Brian begins gathering intelligence late into every night. His enemies are no longer just a few criminals. They are the entire membership of both gangs who were shooting that night. Brian tracks every movement and records every criminal act he can find. He watches Playa carefully, but Playa keeps disappearing from view. Then Brian spots another man named Anthony. He watches him carry a travel bag out of a building and get into a car. Brian films everything and adds it to his wall. Thanksgiving passes and Brian pushes his training into a completely different level. His body has been transformed completely over these months. The weak and broken man is gone. In his place is something that moves like a weapon. He masters car drifting techniques that take professional drivers years to learn. His shooting has become surgical. Every single shot hits dead center. No deviation, no hesitation. The months of preparation are finally behind him. Christmas is approaching and the revenge is ready to begin. Late one night, Brian climbs through a window and enters Anthony's house. Anthony hears the noise and comes out to investigate. Brian hits him before he can register what is happening. Anthony tumbles down the stairs and does not get back up. Brian drags him down to the basement and hangs him upside down from the ceiling. He wears a welding mask, so Anthony cannot identify him. Then he begins the interrogation. Brian presents printed questions one by one and forces Anthony to write the answers. The questions are: gang operations, money laundering methods, names and locations. Anthony looks at the wall covered in surveillance information and realizes the danger he is in. He still tries to resist, and Brian drives a knife into the wood directly in front of his face. The message is clear. Anthony pretends to submit. Then in one sudden movement, he breaks free. He grabs the knife and drives it into Brian. Brian was not ready for this. The blade goes in and Brian stumbles backward. Brian has never been in real combat before. His inexperience costs him badly in this moment, but through desperate effort and raw determination, he fights back. He beats Anthony down until he stops moving. It is December the 24th, the night Brian has been planning toward for more than a year. He lays out his weapons and equipment and prepares everything carefully. He thinks about his wife. He chooses not to see her before he leaves. He cannot tell if it is guilt or grief or both. Instead, Brian picks up the gift that was never opened. He drives to the cemetery. He kneels at his son's grave and places the gift there gently. He presses his hand against the cold stone. He sits there in silence for a very long time. Everything he needs to say is trapped somewhere behind the silence. As night falls, Brian dumps Anthony's bound body on Inspector Dennis's doorstep. Next to him is a red envelope. Anthony is arrested within minutes. Dennis takes the envelope inside and opens it carefully. A handwritten note falls out. It states simply that everything will end tonight. Dennis opens the USB drive included in the envelope. What he finds on it stops him cold. Everything is there. Every criminal act committed by Playa's gang. Every relationship. Every transaction location. Anthony's full written confession. Months of methodical surveillance compressed into one devastating package. Brian compiled all of it for one reason: to make sure the police finish whatever he leaves unfinished tonight. Brian drives toward Playa's hideout when a police broadcast crackles over the radio. Armed robbery in progress nearby. He drives toward it instead. The men carrying out the robbery are large and heavily built. Brian does not move in immediately. He uses a flanking position and waits for them to move. Then he drives his car straight into both of them, at speed. The impact is brutal, but one of them grabs onto the car and refuses to let go. Brian brakes hard and swerves wildly, trying to throw the man off the roof. Nothing works. After several gunshots, blood begins running slowly down the windshield. Brian sits in the silence that follows and feels something shift inside him. This is the first time he has taken a human life. He sits with that for a moment. Then he reaches into the back seat. He takes a wrapped package and throws it over the fence of Playa's compound. Inside the package is the severed hand of Anthony. Anthony was the key holder of Playa's gang. One of Playa's men finds it and brings it directly to the gang leader. Playa stares at the hand and goes rigid with rage. He immediately concludes this was done by the rival gang led by Ruiz. He orders his men to retaliate immediately and without mercy. This was Brian's plan all along: ignite a war between both gangs and let them tear each other apart. The two sides erupt into a full firefight in the streets. Brian is about to enter the chaos when he sees something unexpected. Police officers are surrounded and taking fire from both sides. A female officer is pinned down with nowhere to go. Brian makes a decision. He drives his car in fast circles around her position and opens fire on the gang members closing in. He clears them out one by one from the moving car. A reckless gang member pulls out his phone and starts live streaming the whole thing. Playa watches his men going down one after another through that small screen. He watches the car moving through the carnage like a ghost. He watches Brian handle men like they are nothing. And for the first time all night, Playa feels genuine fear. Brian stops the car in front of the officer and she climbs in. But before he can drive, she is hit in the back by a bullet. Brian drives as fast as he can, trying to get her somewhere safe. But she does not make it. She is gone before they clear the block. He closes his eyes for just a moment. Then he drives. He finds the man who was live streaming the violence and rams his car into him. He takes the phone while it is still recording. He looks directly into the camera. Then he sends the footage to Playa. Playa watches it and the panic sets in completely. He finally understands who is coming for him. He posts $5,000 in the gang chat for anyone who kills Brian tonight. Brian spots Ruiz next and drives past him slowly. A deliberate provocation, he pulls onto a bridge and stops the car. He reaches into the seat beside him and takes out a small music accessory. He holds it quietly. This is the only way he knows to reach his son tonight. He presses his lips to it softly. A promise. Every one of the people responsible will face justice before this night is over. He hears Ruiz coming and floors the accelerator. A car explodes out of a side street and hits Brian's vehicle with full force. Ruiz has found him. A brutal high-speed chase tears through the streets. Inspector Dennis is monitoring the police radio when the reports start flooding in. Two gangs tearing each other apart. A single vehicle moving through it all. Dennis sits with the information for a long moment. Then something clicks. He finally understands exactly what is happening tonight. At his hideout, Playa is with a woman in a dimly lit room. Then the calls start coming in. He orders every member of his crew back to the compound immediately. Brian receives word that Playa has called everyone back to the hideout. He puts on his coat and checks his weapons one final time. The third and final round begins. Gang members converge on the hideout from every direction. Brian moves alongside them in the shadows and follows them in. The moment before the rolling shutter closes completely, Brian charges through. The first floor is chaos. Brian moves through it systematically. He clears the lower level and finds the stairs to the roof. Before heading up, he plants mines along the access points to slow reinforcements. On the roof, he moves through the darkness following sound. Then Ruiz steps out, still alive, still angry. Ruiz is physically larger than Brian, and the fight goes badly immediately. Ruiz drives Brian into a passive position and begins to dominate. Then Brian hears it. The mines detonate below. The explosion tears the roof access open and sends men flying. Ruiz turns toward the sound involuntarily. Brian uses the fraction of a second and counters hard. Inspector Dennis reaches the rooftop. The path up is covered in bodies. Dennis moves forward and encounters gang members still standing. He unleashes a precise combination of strikes and takes them down cleanly. The two men come face to face on the rooftop. Brian keeps his gun raised. Dennis looks at Brian. He sees a father. He sees the full weight of what a year of grief and preparation and pain looks like. He lowers his weapon completely. Then gunfire erupts from behind a door and both men take bullets. They exchange a single glance and split up to flank the position. Brian steps out of the shadows and finds a woman standing there. She turns around slowly. Her face is streaked with tears. Her expression is desperate and small. Brian hesitates. His gun drops slightly. The hesitation almost kills him. She fires. Dennis takes 2 shots coming around the other side. Brian raises his weapon and pulls the trigger. He stands there for a moment afterward holding the blood-stained gun. Then he pushes through to Playa's room. Playa is already there waiting. Brian is covered in wounds and barely standing. His body has nothing left. Playa raises his gun and takes complete control of the moment. Then a single shot rings out. Dennis hits Playa from across the room. The shot does not kill him. Dennis is not a perfect shot. One last strike, Playa drops and does not get up again. Brian stands in the silence that follows. The room is still. Christmas night is over. His son is still gone, and the silence is louder than any gunshot has ever been. If you made it through this devastating and powerful film you just witnessed, one of the most emotional revenge stories ever told. Smash that like button if Brian's silent journey hit you somewhere deep. Subscribe because we are breaking down every powerful thriller you need to see. What movie should we recap next? Drop it in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.